Welcome back. In the previous video, you learned how to move an object around on the screen by using simple animation, moving the X and Y values, increasing them by 1. Now it doesn't allow for a lot of options, it's just simply going to move that object around on the screen. And as we talked about in the previous video, we ran into boundary issues where it would just keep going off the screen and increasing those X and Y values forever and ever and ever. So in this video we're going to learn how to be a little bit more creative. The iPad and the iPhone have a special feature to it called the accelerometer, and that recognizes the tilt of the device. So you can actually move objects by tilting your iPad or your iPhone using that feature. So we're going to actually access that feature in this tutorial so that we can move the smiley face by tilting the device. And we're going to prevent the smiley face from going off the screen, because that would be kind of difficult. Okay, I've already got the smiley face inside of my asset folder. So let's go ahead and introduce the variables for the smiley. Because we're going to be moving the smiley object around the screen, we're going to need to reference its X and Y coordinates. So let's introduce those variables for smiley X coordinate and the smiley Y coordinate right off the bat so that it's done. Now, we need to load our smiley image onto the screen and set its starting coordinates. So let's say its starting coordinates are 0, 0. So smiley X equals 0 and smiley Y equals 0. And we're going to add the image and store it inside the variable smiley. And locate that at the X coordinate smiley X and the Y coordinate smiley Y. Now yes, I could put in 0, 0 for there, but it's better to use variables. It makes it easier to change because we're going to be changing them as it goes. Now we're going to come down to the on timer, because this is where it's going to recognize and run those changes 30 times in 1 second. So we need to introduce variables that recognize the X coordinate based on the accelerometer. So we're going to use the variable ACCX for the accelerometer X variable, and we're going to introduce the same thing for accelerometer Y variable. Now we want to use a new API called tilt get X and tilt get Y in order to recognize how much we are tilting the iPad or the iPhone. So we're going to say store the value from tilt get X inside the variable ACCX. So that gets the how much it's tilted X coordinate wise and stores it. And we'll do the same thing for tilt get Y. So how much is it being tilted along the Y axis, and store that value inside of accelerometer Y. Now we want to actually change the current smiley X coordinate and the current smiley Y coordinate, storing that change affected by how much it's being tilted, if that makes sense. So what we want to do is we want to take the amount that the X coordinate is being tilted by, and we want to divide that by 100 so that it'll just increment in small changes. So we're going to take ACCX and divide that by 100. Now what we want to do is take the value of that tilting change and we want to add it to the X coordinate of the smiley. So we have to get the current X coordinate of smiley, and then we'll add it the incremental change, 1/100th of the tilt for the X value. So it'll take the X value and increment it 1/100th of how much you're tilting your device by. And you can change that 100 to more, to less, to increase the speed, to decrease the speed. It doesn't matter. We want to store that inside of the X variable. So the new X variable will be the current X variable, X coordinate, plus the tilting change. We want to make that exact same calculation, but for the y coordinate. So we'll say smiley y, get the y coordinate of smiley, and add the accelerometer change for the y tilting 1/100th of that. Again, you can change that 100. Alright, now it's going to make those calculations based on the tilting. But we need to tell it, show the image at the new coordinates. So view set xy, so that will take the image and set it at the following xy coordinates. So it's the image smiley that we want to set it. We want to set it at the smiley x coordinate that we've calculated in here, and the smiley y coordinate that we've calculated in this piece of code. Great. So now let's just run our app to make sure that everything is going to look good. Okay, so we've run our app and our smiley face is sitting on the screen. It's not moving automatically like it did in the previous video. Now I didn't make my capture screen big enough for you to see the tilt button. There's a button over on the far right hand side that says tilt. What you want to do is you want to click and hold in your virtual iPad here. Click and hold on it, and as you drag your mouse around, it will pretend that it's tilting the screen so you can see the effect of it. So you won't see me actually moving the mouse, but I am moving it around on that tilt. So now when I drag it around, I can actually see my image moving. Now here comes the problem. What happened to my image? I dragged it off screen. Now I'm bringing it back on screen, but because I dragged it so far, I have some problems. So now I need to put those boundaries inside of my app so that it won't go off screen anymore. So we're going to come in here into our on timer, and we're going to hit right before this last piece of code of view setting the image. We need to put in some restrictions. So we want to say if it goes too far to the right, then stop. Basically, we're not actually making it stop, but it'll make sense in a minute. So if the smiley x coordinate is greater than or equal to, and now you have to ask yourself, what is your maximum x value? I've got my screen in landscape mode, so that means 1028. It's 1028 pixels wide, so I'm going to put 1028 there. So if it's greater than or equal to 1028, I actually don't want it to go beyond that. I just want it to stay located at that spot. Notice there's no semicolon here because this is part of the if statement. Alright, so now if I try to push it beyond the 1028 x coordinate, it will just stay at the 1028 x coordinate. If smiley x is less than or equal to 0, I want it to stay. Oh, and I just realized, hopefully you caught that, there should be a little x right there. Smiley x is 1028. If smiley x is less than or equal to 0, then I want it to be equal to 0. Now let's see how that changes our iPad. Now you'll notice that I can't show you what it does to the if it goes too far to the right because my screen isn't big enough, but I can show you what would happen if it goes too far to the left. So if I increase it to the right, and before it would go off the screen. Now watch what happens. I'm still tilting to the left, but it's not moving anywhere. It's staying at the coordinate 0. Now I've still got the same issue with the up down. It goes off the screen and you have to bring it on again, but I can't go this way. So you should be able to rewrite your code so that it won't go too high or too low. But I'll show you what that looks like. If smiley y is greater than or equal to, and now you'll plug in your maximum y coordinate, which is 768, then I want it to stay at 768. Oops. If the smiley y-coordinate is less than or equal to 0, so if I try to go up too much, then I want it to stay at 0. And I put 1028 here. It's technically 1024, but those couple little pixels won't make a big difference. Some people will play with that a little bit so it will go slightly off screen, but not completely off screen, but it's all good. All right, so I'm going to run it again, and we can see what that will look like. Again, we can only compare the going too far up or too far to the left because I don't have it in the screen big enough. So we go this way, I hit the side, I hit the top, whack his head on there a little bit. Okay, so like I said before, you can modify those zeros here, or the 1060, the 1024 here, or the 768 down here, so that it will look like he goes slightly off screen. So if I wanted to, I could say if it gets to -10. But those are always options where you can just play with those modifications as you see fit. So now when I go up, you can see that he's actually losing part of his head there. So he's just going slightly off screen. So that's up to you. So now I can't wait to see what you come up with using your accelerometer and the API tilt get X and tilt get Y in order to have your image move around on the screen. We'll see you in the next video.